Ladies and gentlemen, the lovers of DMP Kenya, welcome back to Turning the Mirror podcast. My name is Olengo Kwachi. The better part of today has been served by the documentary, well done, well put, by the BBC Africa Eye. I'm talking about none other than the Blood Parliament. If you've not watched it, I advise that you go to YouTube, search for it, and you'll watch it and be touched as a human being and a Kenyan patriot. Now, I want to tell you that the Kenyan authorities have already responded to this documentary. Why am I saying so? Number one, check around and you'll realize that the mainstream media is reporting that the spokesperson of the BBC Africa Eye put it out there very clearly that they did not manage to broadcast this documentary because of pressure from the authorities. So who are these authorities who are giving pressure? I want us all to remember that the BBC is a British public service broadcaster which is headquartered in London with branches all over. So we'll have BBC America, we have BBC Africa and all that. So being a British public service broadcaster, it is within the British borders and governed by the British laws. We all know that Kenya was once a British colony before we got the independence. The Kenyan territory was being governed or ruled by the British government. So having been colonized by the British government or the British authorities, it is very normal to say that we still have links with the British government. Any British government still have links with Kenya. And that is why we'll have British businesses within the country and we'll have Kenyan businesses within Britain. We have links. And therefore our governments talk one-on-one. So automatically, once the government through the intelligence service maybe learned that the British Africa Eye was going to broadcast a documentary on the Gen Z protest that happened in 2024, June last year, they automatically had the authority and all that it takes to call or just make a call or talk to the authorities in the other land to ensure that this documentary was not aired. Do you know why? One of the things is that the mainstream media is still largely consumed by those who are capable and those who manage countries, counties, and areas of governance. And therefore, maybe the Kenyan authority could have feared that by this documentary being aired or broadcasted live through the broadcaster, then those they assume or view as the potential investors or the potential partners, the government partners, other countries, once they watch that, they were going to be demoralized or they were going to run away from Kenya. Or even the authorities were going to call for independent investigations into the happenings of the June 25th or even the days before and even the days after, because after the June 25th protest to date, there have been abductions, we've seen police brutality and all that happening. So maybe they had feared that and so ensured that it was not broadcasted. But then never forget that we are no longer in the Moi era when we only had KBC in the country or rather the mainstream media, which once you manage to suppress, then the information was not going to be out, or just exactly the information you wanted is what was going to be broadcasted. Today we have other platforms like the YouTube where we have the documentary posted. So we still had the BBC post that on YouTube. And with that happening, because then it had passed the first area, they knew when it was not broadcasted, maybe it was not going to pull a serious audience. But remember, within just a few hours, within 24 hours, it is already past 1 million views. And we have comments from all over the world, not just Kenyans, all over the world. And so with that happening, again, it shook the ruling class. What could they do? As usual, because we've seen it happen severally. To divide or drive a narrative, we've always had the authorities sponsor some hashtags, because today most of the young people in Kenya consume content from the social media. One of those big platforms consumed so much within Kenya is the X. So we've always had the government sponsor some hashtags like a working government or Kumi Bila break and such things. Today, if you go to your X platform, just search or look at the trending hashtags. Among the trending hashtags, you'll see BBC paid propaganda as one of the trending hashtags. The second one is BBC for chaos. That is also among the trending hashtags. And those are among the few negative hashtags that are trending, trying to portray the BBC documentary as a negative as a negative content. Maybe content which is out there to bring chaos in Kenya, or a content that is biased or something. But in real sense, the BBC crew did a powerful job with a lot of media ethics, the true spirit of journalism, something that the Kenyan media maybe fear to do because they fear maybe their licenses would be taken or revoked or just something, because you've not had the media, the Kenyan media, do that. But now the BBC has done it because maybe they feel it is important they do it, and again they might as well feel that the Kenyan authorities cannot do much to harm them because they are not within, their headquarters are not within the Kenyan border. So these two hashtags, I believe, they are out there to drive a narrative. They are not just out there. I doubt if just a common Kenyan with human heart, having watched exactly what transpired. Because if at all you were out there during the Gen Z movement, you can attest that whatever BBC has portrayed out there is exactly what happened. There's even more that is still hidden, that is not in the public. So I doubt if someone in their right senses would come up with such hashtags. And therefore, to me, personally, I believe these hashtags is a way of government responding to whatever BBC has posted. Again, automatically, today we expect the president to respond because it's his nature. Do you remember the former president Uhuru Kenyatta? When he had it rough on the social media, he decided to leave, closed his accounts, and left the social media. Left the Kenyan people to speak freely without anything affecting him. But today we have a president who responds to everything. Just speak negatively about him, he'll respond to it maybe next when he's in church, or in a political rally, or any event. And so automatically, as usual, we expect that the president will respond to this personally. Maybe on a political rally, in a church event, or any other event. Maybe some of his tours he dub as development tours, which turns to be political rallies or political tours. And as of now, he cannot respond directly by posting that on his handles. We cannot see him call up press to do that. What can he do? Again, if those who are allied to him speak, automatically Kenyans and even the world will translate that as if it is the president who has spoken. Because most of these bigwigs speak through their lieutenants. Most of them speak through their people. And so if we have MPs like Imani Ichung'wah, MPs like Oscar Sudi, among other political figures who are allied to the president speak against this, people will automatically say that is the president speaking through them. So what can he do? Speak through those who are not seen as your people. Or in quotes, as Kenyans say, the dogs or your dogs. Today, if you go online and check the platforms, you realize that we have a few political figures who are speaking against this. One of them is Opondo Kaluma, the MP for Homa Bay Town. He has just called for the government and the authorities to ensure they revoke the licenses under which the BBC as an international or foreign media operates within the Kenyan borders. That is a message. Again, we've had someone like the Kileleshwa Ward MCA, Robert Alai, speak and trying to explain that the military officer who was seen shooting at a protester, a peaceful protester, might have been one of the many officers who guard the graveyard of the former president, the first president, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta. So everything is going to be out there. They are going to try to explain everything in, out, just to try and ensure that they respond as much as they can, as much effective as they can, to ensure they sway and change the perspective of the Kenyan citizens. And finally, remember that if you look at the BBC documentary, when it's finishing, at the end of it, they've said everybody they contacted and their response. The Kenyan military and the Kenyan police, the National Police Service, responded by saying, actually they are giving all the blame, they are leaving all the blame to the IPOA. Remember just recently the IPOA was out there saying that they are like a toothless dog. They are not allowed to do their work independently as it should. They are not being given the evidences they need. They are not being given the support they need. But having these two powerful bodies leave the blame to the IPOA, that tells you something. Because nobody is willing to take responsibility. But I suspect that if this photo that the BBC talked about when referring to the military officer who shot a protester at the parliament buildings is this officer, then when the BBC reached out to the military, if at all this image and this image is the same person, then I suspect when the BBC reached out to the military for their comments, they might have also searched and known the person. And remember just recently when this officer was portrayed out there as an outsider. Is it adding up? An outsider working with the military for all that period without being known and perhaps maybe receiving salary? So maybe they decided, if at all he is the person, then they decided to sacrifice him so that they clean their names. Remember that military has always been regarded as a very disciplined wing or a very disciplined force and always loved by Kenyans. Kenyans always know that a military cannot turn its back against its own people. So maybe, if at all that officer is the same person being talked about in the documentary, then chances are that the forces or the authorities that used him decided to sacrifice him. But I doubt if he's sacrificed, then he's going to just lose his job that way. Maybe we'll have him serve in other capacities. That is maybe if he is the same person. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave your comments, what you think, and how you think this government has already responded. And please subscribe if you have not subscribed. Like, share, leave us with your comments so that we know what you think. And thank you always for your support. Please subscribe because that means you would have seriously supported what we do. My name is Kwachi.